My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, right in the middle of Rose's aunt telling me about her prize-winning roses at the Greenwich Garden Club competition. I had been balancing a plate with a slice of too sweet vanilla cake and nodding politely, trying to look interested while my mind wandered to whether Chloe had remembered to put on sunscreen. When I saw Ethan flash across my screen, something in my stomach twisted immediately. My oldest son never called me on weekend afternoons. Never. "Mom, where are you?" His voice hit me like cold water. It was controlled, too controlled, the way he used to sound when he was 7 years old trying not to cry during thunderstorms. "I'm at Rose's birthday party, sweetheart, at your house. Is everything okay?" I could feel my heart starting to pick up speed, that maternal instinct that never goes away no matter how old your children get. "Listen to me very carefully." He cut me off before I could finish my sentence. "I need you to leave that house right now and take Chloe with you. Don't ask questions, don't say goodbye to anyone, just get my daughter and get out of there." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Around me, people were laughing. Kids were running through the sprinklers in the backyard. Someone was arguing about whether to cut the cake now or wait for more guests. Everything felt suddenly surreal, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. "Ethan, what are you talking about? You're scaring me. What happened?" My voice came out shakier than I intended. "Mom, please!" His voice cracked and I felt my blood turn to ice. In 32 years, I had heard my son cry maybe 5 times. Once when he broke his arm falling off his bike at 9. Once at his grandfather's funeral. Once when his college girlfriend broke his heart. Once when Chloe was born. And once, late at night 8 months ago, when he called me drunk and whispered that he felt like a stranger in his own house. I don't have time to explain. I'm on my way there now, but you need to get Chloe out of that house immediately. Trust me. Please, Mom, just trust me. The line went dead. My hand was shaking as I lowered the phone. Trust him. My son had never, not once in his entire life, asked me to do something like this. Ethan was measured, logical, the child who thought everything through 3 times before acting. If he was this panicked, if his voice was breaking like that, something was terribly, terribly wrong. I took a breath and forced myself to think clearly. Chloe. Where was Chloe? My eyes scanned the backyard, past the pink and white balloons tied to every available surface, past the table loaded with presents wrapped in glittery paper, past the groups of adults chatting and children playing. There. Near the dessert table, my granddaughter stood in her white eyelet dress, the one we had picked out together last week at that little boutique in Darien. Her blonde hair was still in the 2 French braids I had done that morning, ribbons perfectly intact. She was reaching for a cupcake with pink frosting. I set down my plate and walked toward her, trying to keep my steps normal, unhurried. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to grab my granddaughter and run, but I couldn't make a scene. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. "Chloe, sweetie." I bent down to her level, forcing the brightest smile I could manage onto my face. "Grandma has a special surprise waiting in the car. Want to come see?" Her blue eyes, so much like Ethan's, lit up. "A surprise? What kind of surprise?" "It's a secret surprise." I held out my hand. "But we have to go right now, or it might disappear." She giggled and put her small hand in mine, sticky from the frosting she had already sampled. "Okay, Grandma." I straightened up and started walking toward the side gate that led to the driveway where I had parked my Mercedes. We were maybe 20 feet away when I heard Vivian's voice behind me, sharp and loud enough to cut through all the party noise. "Catherine, where do you think you're taking my daughter?" I kept walking, my grip on Chloe's hand tightening slightly. "Just showing her something in my car, Vivian. We'll be right back." "Stop." The word wasn't a request. I heard footsteps behind me, quick and angry. "I said stop, Catherine. You don't take my child anywhere without asking me first." I turned around slowly. My daughter-in-law stood about 10 feet away, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mixture of anger and something else, something that looked almost like panic. Rose was beside her, phone in hand as always, and I noticed for the first time that she had been filming. How long had she been filming? "Vivian, Ethan asked me to take Chloe to my car. There's nothing to be concerned about." I kept my voice steady, calm, even though my pulse was racing. Ethan is in Boston. She took a step closer. He's been in Boston since yesterday for that client meeting. So unless you've developed psychic abilities, Catherine, I don't think my husband asked you anything. Boston. Ethan had told her he was in Boston, but he had just called me, panicked, telling me he was on his way here, which meant he had lied to her about where he was, which meant he didn't want her to know where he was, which meant this was so much worse than I thought. Mommy, Grandma has a surprise for me. Chloe tugged on my hand, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. Chloe, go back to the party. Vivian's voice was ice. Now! But Grandma said, I don't care what Grandma said. Go, play with the other kids. Chloe's little face crumpled, confused by the anger in her mother's voice. I squeezed her hand gently. It's okay, sweetheart. The surprise can wait. But even as I said the words, I was calculating. Ethan had said to get Chloe out of here. Now. He had sounded desperate. And Vivian was blocking my path to the gate, Rose filming everything. And I was starting to understand that this was not a misunderstanding. This was something planned, something deliberate. Other guests were starting to notice the confrontation. Conversations were stopping. Heads were turning. I saw Rose's mother, Vivian's sister, moving toward us with concern on her face. Everything okay here? Everything's fine. Vivian didn't take her eyes off me. Catherine was just leaving. Actually, I said, my voice coming out stronger than I felt, I'm taking Chloe with me. Ethan asked me to pick her up. Ethan is in Boston, Vivian repeated, louder this time, making sure everyone nearby could hear. And Catherine seems to be confused about who has the right to take my child anywhere. Rose, are you still recording? Yeah, I got it all. Rose's voice was nervous, uncertain. Recording. She was recording me. Building some kind of evidence of what? What was happening here? The pieces weren't fitting together, but the picture they were starting to form made my skin crawl. I made a decision. I bent down, scooped Chloe up into my arms, even though she was getting too big for that, and started walking toward the gate again. Fast. Catherine! Vivian's scream was sharp enough to silence the entire party. Put her down! Someone call the police! She's kidnapping my daughter! Kidnapping. The word hung in the air like poison. I kept walking, Chloe now crying in my arms, confused and scared by all the shouting. My car was right there, just past the gate, maybe 30 more feet. I could hear Vivian running behind me, hear other people moving, voices raised in confusion and alarm. I reached my car, yanked open the back door, put Chloe in her car seat that I always kept installed for our days together. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely buckle her in. She was crying harder now, asking what was wrong. Why was Mommy yelling? Why was everyone mad? It's okay, baby. Everything's okay. Grandma's got you. My voice was breaking, but I got the buckle clicked. I slammed the door and turned around to find Vivian right there, her face twisted with rage. You're not taking her anywhere. She reached for the door handle. Step away from my car. Something in my voice must have surprised her because she actually took a step back. Ethan called me. He told me to get Chloe. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm following my son's instructions. Your son is in Boston, and you're having some kind of breakdown. She pulled out her own phone. I'm calling the police. Everyone here just witnessed you try to kidnap my child. I got into the driver's seat and locked all the doors. Through the window, I could see a crowd gathering. Rose was still filming. Vivian was on her phone, talking rapidly to someone. And I was trapped, my granddaughter crying in the back seat, not understanding why her grandmother wouldn't let her see her mother, not understanding any of this. That's when I saw another car pull up, tires screeching slightly as it came to a fast stop behind mine, blocking me in. Ethan's BMW. My son got out like a storm, his face pale and set in an expression I had never seen before. Liam, my younger son, emerged from the passenger side holding a thick manila folder. Ethan didn't even look at Vivian as he walked past her. He came straight to my car window. I rolled it down. Are you okay? Did you get her in time? His voice was rough, like he had been shouting or crying or both. In time for what? Ethan, what is happening? Liam was already at my passenger door. I unlocked it and he slid into the seat, opening the folder and spreading papers across the dashboard. Mom, look at these. Look at all of this. I looked down at the documents he was showing me. Plane tickets to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, scheduled for tonight at 9 p.m. 2 passengers, Vivian Caldwell Westfield and Chloe Westfield. A rental agreement for a house in Fort Lauderdale, 6-month lease starting today. Bank statements showing withdrawals of $47,000 from Ethan and Vivian's joint account over the past 10 weeks, all transferred to an account in Vivian's name only. But it was the legal documents that made my blood run cold. A petition for emergency custody, filed in Florida, citing me by name as a threat to Chloe's well-being, alleging parental alienation, alleging that I was unstable, controlling, attempting to undermine Vivian's authority as a mother, alleging that Ethan was neglectful and that Vivian needed to establish residence in Florida to protect Chloe from both her father and her dangerous grandmother. She was going to take her tonight. Ethan's voice came from outside my window. He was facing Vivian now, who had gone completely white. During this party, while I was supposedly in Boston, she was going to get on a plane with our daughter and disappear to Florida, where her cousin has that house set up. She was going to file restraining orders against both of us, using edited videos that Rose has been making for months. She was going to trap me in a custody battle where she had all the geographical advantage, and I would have had to fight just to see my own daughter. I need to go back to the beginning, to understand how we got here, to this parking lot that looks like a crime scene, with my granddaughter crying in my back seat and my son confronting his wife with evidence of a plan so calculated it makes my stomach turn. 8 years ago, Ethan brought Vivian to dinner at Capitol Grill in Stamford. I remember that night so clearly because I tried so hard to like her. I really did. She was pretty, polished, well-spoken. She worked in public relations, she said, helping small businesses build their brands. She had grown up in Ohio, moved to Connecticut for better opportunities, was building a life for herself. All good things, all normal things. But there were small moments that bothered me. The way she corrected Ethan when he told a story about his college days, interrupting to change details that didn't really matter. The way her eyes tracked to my handbag, my watch, my earrings before they tracked to my face. The way every conversation eventually circled back to how her family hadn't had the same advantages as others, said with a smile that had edges. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself that I was falling into the trap of being the mother who thinks no woman is good enough for her son. I had seen it happen to friends, that transformation into the difficult mother-in-law, and I was determined not to become that woman. So I smiled and nodded and asked interested questions and tried to find common ground. 6 months later, she was pregnant. Ethan came to my house on a Tuesday evening. I remember because I had just gotten back from my book club and still had my coat on when he knocked. He looked pale, shaken, and before he even said the words, I knew. A mother knows. We're having a baby. He sat on my couch and put his head in his hands. It wasn't planned. We were being careful, but I guess not careful enough. She's 8 weeks along. What do you want to do? I asked, sitting beside him. What I want. He looked at me and I saw fear in his eyes. I want to feel ready. I want to feel like this is the right time. I want to feel like we're solid enough as a couple to bring a child into this. He paused. But none of that matters now, does it? There's a baby coming, and I'm going to do the right thing. The right thing. My kind, responsible, honorable son who always did what he thought was right, even when it cost him. We planned a small wedding, quick and simple at the courthouse, followed by dinner at a nice restaurant with immediate family only. Vivian cried during the vows, and I thought at the time that it was from happiness. Looking back now, I wonder if she was crying because she knew she had trapped him. Or maybe she was crying because she knew he didn't love her. Not really. Not the way a man should love the woman he's marrying. Chloe was born 7 months later, and she changed everything. That tiny, perfect little girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's delicate features. The first time I held her, she wrapped her miniature hand around my finger, and I fell completely, irreversibly in love. Being a grandmother, I discovered, was different from being a mother. It was all the joy with less of the worry, all the love with the wisdom that comes from having done this before. I started spending a lot of time with Chloe. Ethan and Vivian both worked, and I was freshly retired from my consulting firm. I had sold my business 2 years earlier for enough money to live very comfortably for the rest of my life, and suddenly I had time. So much time. Time to babysit, to take Chloe to music classes and library story hours, to teach her to bake cookies and plant flowers in my garden. And the more time I spent with my granddaughter, the colder Vivian became toward me. It started small. Comments about how I was spoiling Chloe with too many presents. Suggestions that I was undermining her parenting choices by letting Chloe have treats before dinner or stay up past bedtime when she slept over at my house. Increasingly frequent cancellations when Chloe was supposed to spend weekends with me, always with vague excuses about plans changing or Chloe not feeling well. Then came the passive-aggressive comments in front of other people. At Chloe's second birthday party, Vivian made a joke that wasn't really a joke about how some grandmothers need to remember they're not the mother. At Christmas dinner, she mentioned loudly that it was interesting how Chloe always asked for me when she was upset, as if I had somehow engineered that preference. I tried talking to Ethan about it. He was defensive, exhausted, caught in the middle. Mom, you need to understand that Vivian feels insecure. She didn't have a close relationship with her own mother, and she's trying to figure out how to be a good mom. When you're so involved, it makes her feel like you don't trust her to take care of Chloe. That's not what I'm doing, I protested. I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to be present for my granddaughter. I know that, but can you just give her some space? Let her feel like she's the primary person in Chloe's life? So I did. I pulled back. I said no to babysitting requests sometimes. I waited for invitations instead of just showing up. I tried to be the kind of grandmother who was helpful but not intrusive, present but not overbearing. It didn't matter. Nothing I did was right. If I called too often, I was smothering. If I didn't call enough, I was distant and uninterested. If I bought Chloe gifts, I was trying to buy her affection. If I didn't, I was playing favorites because Liam didn't have children yet. 2 years ago, things came to a head. Ethan and Vivian were fighting constantly. I could hear it in my son's voice when we talked on the phone, see it in the way he held tension in his shoulders at family dinners. One Sunday afternoon, I suggested gently that they might benefit from couples therapy, that a neutral third party could help them communicate better, work through whatever was causing so much conflict. Vivian exploded. She accused me of trying to break up her marriage, of never accepting her as part of the family, of poisoning Ethan against her. The words came so fast and so venomous that I just stood there, shocked into silence. Ethan didn't defend me. He apologized to his wife and asked me to leave. The next day, he called. Mom, I need you to take a step back from our family for a while. Vivian is really hurt, and I need to focus on my marriage right now. I need you to respect our boundaries. Boundaries. The word felt like a door closing in my face. But what could I say? He was an adult. They were his family now. So I stepped back. Way back. I saw Chloe maybe once a month after that, always with Vivian present, always feeling like I was being watched and evaluated for any misstep. Those were the longest, loneliest months of my life since my divorce. I had lost my marriage, then thrown myself into my work. I had built a company from nothing, sold it for millions, and thought I had found peace in my independence. But losing daily access to my granddaughter felt like losing a piece of my heart that I hadn't known was vulnerable. Then, 8 months ago, Rose moved in with them. Vivian's niece, her older sister's daughter. She was 29 years old, supposedly between apartments, supposedly just staying for a few weeks until she got back on her feet. She had dropped out of graduate school for the 3rd time and needed somewhere to land. Ethan called me late one night. I could tell immediately that he had been drinking, which was unusual for my son. Mom, he said, his words slightly slurred, I feel like a stranger in my own house. Rose is living in my home office. Vivian and her are always together, always talking, always stopping when I walk into a room. And I can't say anything because if I do, I'm the bad guy who won't help family. Tell her she needs to leave, I said. It's your house too. You don't understand. He sounded so defeated. If I push back on anything, Vivian threatens to leave and take Chloe. She said it outright. She says I care more about my mother than my own family, that I let you manipulate me, that I'm not really committed to our marriage. Ethan, that's emotional manipulation. That's not healthy. I know, Mom. But what am I supposed to do? If she leaves and takes Chloe to another state, I could spend years in court trying to get custody. And the courts favor mothers, especially mothers of young children. I can't risk losing my daughter. So he stayed, and Rose stayed, and I watched from a distance as my son became a shell of himself, working longer and longer hours to avoid going home, his light dimming a little more every time I saw him. The last 3 months had been the worst. Vivian started limiting my access to Chloe even further, citing vague concerns about my influence. When I did see my granddaughter, there was always a camera present. Rose's camera, specifically, filming everything under the guise of making family memories. Chloe started asking me strange questions. Grandma, why don't you like my mommy? Grandma, Mommy says you think she's a bad mother. Is that true? Every question was a knife to my heart because I knew exactly what was happening. I knew Vivian was poisoning my relationship with my granddaughter, planting seeds of doubt, creating a narrative where I was the villain. But I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know she was planning to disappear with Chloe. I didn't know about the Florida house, the plane tickets, the custody petition that painted me as dangerous and Ethan as neglectful. I didn't know until 43 minutes ago when my son called me, his voice breaking with panic, telling me to grab his daughter and run. The scene in front of Ethan's house was chaos. Vivian was screaming at my son, her voice high and sharp enough to shatter glass. Party guests were crowding around, some filming on their phones, others trying to understand what was happening. Children were crying, confused by the adult drama unfolding in front of them. And Rose, pale and shaking, had finally lowered her phone. You went through my personal documents? Vivian's face was twisted with rage and something else, something that looked like cornered animal panic. You invaded my privacy? You had no right. No right? Ethan's voice was deadly quiet, which was somehow more terrifying than if he had been shouting. You were planning to kidnap our daughter and you're talking to me about rights? I'm her mother. I wasn't kidnapping anyone. I was protecting her from a toxic family situation. She gestured wildly at me, still sitting in my car with the doors locked. From her, from your obsessive mother who can't let go, who's always interfering, always judging me, always trying to turn you against me. Liam was beside my window now, his lawyer voice calm and measured. Mom, stay in the car. Don't engage. Let me handle this. He pulled out his own phone and started recording everything. Vivienne, I need you to understand that everything you're saying right now is being documented. You should probably stop talking. Oh, so now the whole family is ganging up on me. This is exactly what I've been dealing with for years. The perfect Westfield family, so rich, so successful, looking down on me because I didn't come from money, because I had to work for everything I have. She was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I was trying to protect my daughter from growing up in a family where she's used as a weapon, where her grandmother poisons her against her own mother. Several guests were nodding along with her words. They were seeing a distraught mother being accused of terrible things by her husband and his family. They were seeing her tears, her anguish, her passionate defense of motherhood. They weren't seeing the plane tickets for tonight, the drained bank accounts, the fake custody documents. Ethan must have realized this too, because he raised his voice, addressing the crowd. Everyone needs to know what's really happening here. My wife has been planning for months to take our daughter to Florida without my knowledge or consent. She's stolen $47,000 from our joint savings. She's created fake evidence with her niece Rose to make it look like my mother is unstable and that I'm a neglectful father. She was going to get on a plane tonight and file for emergency custody in another state, claiming she was fleeing an abusive situation that doesn't exist. The murmuring in the crowd changed tone. People were looking at Vivian differently now, uncertainty replacing sympathy. Rose made a small sound, almost like a whimper, and tried to back away into the house. Rose, stay exactly where you are. Liam's command stopped her mid-step. You're part of this. You've been filming edited content for months designed to build a false case. That makes you complicit in fraud and potentially conspiracy to commit parental kidnapping. I didn't know. Rose's voice came out as a squeak. I mean, Vivian said she just wanted documentation of family interactions. She said Catherine was trying to take Chloe away from her and she needed proof for a lawyer. She never said anything about Florida or kidnapping or anything illegal. That's a lie! Vivian whirled on her niece. Don't you dare throw me under the bus to save yourself. I'm not lying. Rose was crying now too, her carefully applied makeup running in dark streaks. You told me we were helping protect Chloe. You said her grandmother was manipulative and that Ethan was checked out. You said we needed evidence for a custody evaluation. Shut up, Rose. Just shut up. Vivian's voice had gone cold. But Rose was unraveling, words spilling out faster and faster. You made me film everything. Every time Catherine came over, every interaction between them and Chloe, every conversation. You made me edit things to make it look worse than it was. Like that time Catherine gave Chloe ice cream before dinner, and you told me to cut out the part where you had said it was okay. Or when Ethan fell asleep on the couch, and you had me film it, to make it look like he was always sleeping instead of parenting. But you cut out the part where he had just worked a 16-hour day. I felt sick listening to this. Months of careful manipulation, of building a false narrative brick by brick. How long had Vivian been planning this? When had she decided that stealing my son's daughter and his money was her best option? Someone in the crowd spoke up, an older woman I recognized as one of the neighbors. Maybe we should call the police. This sounds like something they need to handle. Already on their way. Liam held up his phone. I called them 5 minutes ago. Vivian's face drained of all color. You called the police? On me? The mother of your niece? I called the police because a crime was about to be committed. Multiple crimes, actually. Liam's voice was matter-of-fact, the way he probably spoke in courtrooms. Parental kidnapping is a felony. So is theft of marital assets with intent to defraud. So is creating false evidence for legal proceedings. You should probably get a lawyer, Vivian. A good one. Ethan, please. Vivian's demeanor shifted instantly, the rage melting into pleading desperation. She moved toward my son, reaching for him. Please, you don't understand. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to save our family. Your mother has been poisoning our marriage from the beginning. She's never accepted me. She's turned you against me. I just wanted us to have a fresh start somewhere new, away from her influence, away from all of this. By stealing our daughter in the middle of a birthday party? By draining our savings account? By creating fake evidence to make me and my mother look like threats? Ethan stepped back from her touch. That's not saving a family, Vivian. That's destroying one. I have a right to protect my child from a toxic environment. You have a right to file for divorce through proper legal channels. You don't have a right to flee across state lines with our daughter without my consent. You especially don't have a right to commit fraud in the process. I could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. Chloe was still crying in my back seat, though softer now, exhausted from the emotion. I wanted to comfort her, but I was afraid to leave my car, afraid that Vivian would try something desperate. She was cornered now, her plan exposed, her escape route cut off. Cornered people did unpredictable things. A police cruiser pulled up, then another. 2 officers got out, looking at the scene with the wary assessment of people who had responded to domestic disputes before. Liam immediately moved toward them, his lawyer credentials probably giving him authority that the rest of us didn't have. I watched through my windshield as he spoke to them in low tones, gesturing to Vivian, to the documents still spread across my dashboard, to Rose, who was now sitting on the front steps with her head in her hands. One of the officers nodded and approached Ethan, asking him to explain the situation. My son's voice was steady as he laid out the facts. The plane tickets purchased without his knowledge, the drained bank account, the rental house in Florida, the custody petition filed in another state claiming abuse and neglect that didn't exist, the months of manufactured evidence, the plan to disappear with Chloe tonight during a party that had been specifically orchestrated to provide cover for the kidnapping. The officer's expression grew more serious with each detail. He looked at Vivian, who was crying again, shaking her head in denial even as the evidence mounted against her. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to answer some questions. I didn't do anything wrong. This is my husband and his family trying to take my daughter away from me. I'm the victim here. Her voice was raw, desperate. Ma'am, we've received credible allegations of planned parental abduction and financial fraud. You're not under arrest at this time, but we need you to come to the station to provide your statement. I'm not going anywhere without my daughter. She started moving toward my car. The second officer stepped in her path. Ma'am, I need you to step back from the vehicle. That's my daughter in there. She needs her mother. The child is with her grandmother and father. She's safe. You need to step back now. I saw Vivian's body language shift, saw her gearing up to do something rash, and before I could process what was happening, she lunged toward my car door, yanking on the handle with both hands. Chloe, Mommy's here. Don't let them take you. Both officers moved immediately, pulling her back. She fought them, screaming, completely unraveling in front of the assembled crowd. It took both men to restrain her, to get handcuffs on her while she shrieked about her rights, about police brutality, about being persecuted by her husband's wealthy family. Chloe was hysterical now, screaming for her mommy, watching her mother being handcuffed by police. I unbuckled my seatbelt and climbed into the back seat with her, pulling her into my arms, covering her eyes with my hand so she couldn't see anymore. Shh, baby. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Grandma's got you. I've got you. But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure they were true. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her mother was trying to steal her away from her father? How do you explain that sometimes parents do terrible things wrapped in claims of love? How do you help a child understand that the safe world she knew had been an illusion, built on lies and manipulation? Ethan was at my window now, his face pressed against the glass, tears streaming down his cheeks. Is she okay? Mom? Is Chloe okay? I rolled down the window a crack. She's scared. She needs you. He nodded and opened the back door, sliding in next to us. Chloe immediately launched herself from my arms to his, sobbing into his chest. Daddy, why are the police taking Mommy? What's happening? I want Mommy. I know, sweetie. I know. He held her tight, rocking slightly. Mommy made some mistakes and she needs to talk to the police about them. But you're safe. Daddy's here and Grandma's here and we're going to take care of you. Through the window, I watched as they put Vivian in the back of the police car. She was still crying, still protesting, but the fight had gone out of her. She looked broken, defeated. One of the officers was now talking to Rose, who was cooperating fully, answering every question, clearly trying to distance herself from the more serious charges. Liam approached my car. Mom, the police want to see the documents, and they want statements from all of us. We're going to need to go down to the station. What about Chloe? I gestured to my sobbing granddaughter. I called Linda. Linda was Liam's girlfriend, a kindergarten teacher who Chloe adored. She's coming to pick up Chloe and take her to your house. She'll stay with her while we deal with this. The next 2 hours were a blur of police stations and statements and questions. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair and recounted everything. The phone call from Ethan, the party, Vivian's reaction when I tried to leave with Chloe, finding out about the plane tickets and the Florida house and the $47,000. The detective taking my statement was a woman about my age, with kind eyes and gray hair cut in a practical bob. Mrs. Westfield, you did the right thing by keeping your granddaughter in the car and calling for help. If she had gotten on that plane tonight, it could have taken months or even years to get her back. I didn't know what I was doing, I admitted. My son called and told me to get her out of there, and I just reacted. Mother's instinct, she said with a slight smile. Or in this case, grandmother's instinct. It's a real thing, and it saved that little girl from a very bad situation. In another room, Ethan was giving his statement. I learned later that he had discovered Vivian's plan purely by accident. He had come home early from a business trip that morning, a day earlier than planned because his client meeting had been rescheduled. Vivian thought he was staying overnight in Boston. When he walked into their bedroom looking for his laptop charger, he found her suitcases packed and hidden in the closet. 2 suitcases, one for her and a smaller one for Chloe. That had been strange enough to make him search further. He found the plane tickets in her email, the rental agreement, the bank statements showing systematic withdrawals. And then he found the custody petition, already filed in Florida, already assigned a case number, full of lies about his mother's dangerous interference and his own emotional abandonment of his family. He found phone records showing hundreds of calls to a number in Florida that belonged to a man named Derek, a man Vivian had been dating online for 6 months, a man who was waiting for her in that rental house, ready to play stepfather to Chloe, ready to help Vivian spend the money she had stolen. Ethan had called Liam immediately, his younger brother, the lawyer, who knew exactly what to do, who told him to gather every piece of evidence he could find, photograph everything, and not to confront Vivian until Chloe was safe. Because once Vivian knew that he knew, she might accelerate her timeline or do something rash. So Ethan had pretended everything was normal. He had called Vivian and told her his meeting was running late, that he wouldn't be home until tomorrow. He had given her enough rope to hang herself. And then he had waited until the party was in full swing, until Vivian was distracted, until Chloe was with me and he had called. "How did you know to trust me?" I asked him later, when we were finally allowed to leave the station. "How did you know I would get her out of there without asking too many questions?" "Because you're my mother," he said simply. "Because I've watched you my whole life put your family first, even when it cost you. Even when I pushed you away because Vivian told me to. Even when I made you feel like you were the problem." His voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for how I've treated you these past 2 years. You tried to tell me something was wrong, and I called you controlling. You tried to help, and I called it interference. You were right about everything, and I made you feel like you were crazy." I pulled him into a hug, this man who would always be my little boy no matter how tall he grew. "You were trying to save your marriage. You were trying to do what you thought was right for Chloe. I understand. I was being manipulated. There's a difference." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Liam showed me some articles about narcissistic abuse and gaslighting. That's what she was doing. Making me doubt my own perceptions, isolating me from you, making me think that every problem in our marriage was somehow my fault or yours. And I fell for it. For years, I fell for it." We stood in the parking lot of the police station as the sun set, turning the sky orange and pink. Somewhere in that building, Vivian was being processed and charged. Rose was being questioned. And tomorrow, lawyers would get involved, family court, custody evaluations, all the messy machinery of a marriage imploding in the most public and painful way possible. But tonight, we just needed to go home. We needed to hold Chloe and help her feel safe. We needed to figure out how to explain the unexplainable. We needed to start putting together the pieces of a family that had been fractured by lies. Liam drove us back to my house in Greenwich. Linda was there with Chloe, who had finally cried herself to sleep on my living room couch, still in her white party dress, her face blotchy and swollen from tears. Linda gave us a sympathetic look and quietly gathered her things to leave. "Call me if you need anything," she whispered to Liam. "Any time, day or night." After she left, the three of us just stood there looking at Chloe's sleeping form. My son, my grandson, and me. What was left of our family after the explosion. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Now I file for divorce. I file for full custody. I fight like hell to make sure my daughter never has to live in fear of being stolen in the night." He looked at me. "And I beg your forgiveness for being an idiot who almost let his mother become collateral damage in his wife's schemes." "There's nothing to forgive," I said firmly. "We're family. We protect each other, even when it's hard, even when we don't understand. That's what family means." But even as I said it, I wondered if we would ever really recover from this, if Ethan would ever fully trust again, if Chloe would remember this day as the day her world fell apart, if I would ever stop feeling the fear I felt when I heard my son's voice crack with panic on that phone call. Only time would tell. And tonight, time felt like both an enemy and an ally. An enemy because we had to get through it. An ally because eventually, maybe, it would heal the wounds that had been opened today. 3 days after the party that destroyed our family, I got a phone call that changed everything again. I was sitting in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, watching Chloe eat cereal with Ethan beside her. We had fallen into a strange, new routine. My son and granddaughter were living with me temporarily while lawyers sorted through the wreckage of Ethan's marriage. Chloe was having nightmares every night, waking up screaming for her mother, confused about why Mommy wasn't there, why Daddy looked so sad all the time, why everything felt wrong. The number on my phone was unfamiliar but local. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a spam call. But something made me pick up. "Mrs. Westfield? Catherine Westfield?" The voice was female, young, nervous. Yes, this is Catherine. My name is Amanda Torres. I'm Derek's sister. The man in Florida that Vivian was involved with. There was a long pause. I need to talk to you about what my brother told me. About what was really supposed to happen. My blood went cold. What do you mean, what was really supposed to happen? Can we meet? Please? I have information that I think you need to hear. That the police need to hear. But I'm scared and I don't know who to trust, and my brother told me things that I can't just keep to myself anymore. 20 minutes later, Amanda Torres sat across from me in a coffee shop in Norwalk, halfway between us. She was maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and exhausted eyes that kept darting to the door like she expected someone to burst through it. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, wrapping her hands around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. "I've been going crazy for the past 3 days trying to figure out what to do." "What did your brother tell you?" She took a shaky breath. "Derek met Vivienne on some dating site 6 months ago. She told him she was separated from her husband, going through a difficult divorce, that her husband's family was wealthy and trying to take her daughter away from her. She said she needed to relocate to Florida to escape them, to start fresh, and Derek, he fell for it, all of it. Okay. I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was racing. And he told me 2 days ago, when he heard about what happened at the party, that there was more to the plan than just Vivian moving to Florida with Chloe. Amanda's hands were shaking now. He said Vivian told him that once she established residence in Florida and got the custody order, once she had access to the divorce settlement she was expecting, there was going to be an accident. The coffee shop seemed to tilt. What kind of accident? An accident involving you. Amanda looked directly at me now, tears in her eyes. Vivian told Derek that you had a history of mental health issues, that you were unstable, that you had threatened her and Chloe multiple times. She said that if you tried to interfere with her custody arrangements in Florida, if you tried to fight her in court or come after Chloe, that something would need to be done to stop you permanently. I couldn't breathe. She was planning to hurt me. She was planning to kill you. Amanda said the words like they physically hurt coming out. Or have you killed? She told Derek she knew people who could make it look like a burglary gone wrong or a car accident. She said that with you out of the way, Ethan would fall apart. He was already weak, she said, already isolated from his family. Without you to lean on, he would give up, sign whatever papers she put in front of him, disappear from Chloe's life entirely. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Why are you telling me this? Because when I heard what happened, when I heard that you stopped her from taking Chloe, that Ethan found out about the plan, that Vivian got arrested, Derek told me everything, and he laughed. Her voice broke. He actually laughed and said it was too bad the plan fell apart because the payoff would have been good. That Vivian promised him $50,000 if he could find someone to handle the grandmother problem. That's what she called you. The grandmother problem. Does Derek know you're here? No. He thinks I'm at work. He has no idea I would ever tell anyone this. She pulled out her phone. But I recorded him. When he was telling me all of this, I pretended I was just listening, just letting him talk. But I was recording every word. I have him on tape talking about the murder-for-hire plan, about the money Vivian promised him, about how she had it all mapped out. She slid the phone across the table to me. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Derek's voice came through clearly, casual and unconcerned, describing a plan to murder me like he was discussing the weather, talking about how Vivian was smart, how she had thought of everything, how the insurance money from Ethan would have made them all rich once I was dead and he gave up fighting for custody. I stopped the recording. I couldn't listen to anymore. You need to take this to the police. Today. Right now. I'm scared. Amanda was crying openly now. Derek's not a good person. He's been in trouble before. Assault charges, drug dealing when he was younger. If he finds out I turned against him, I don't know what he'll do. The police can protect you. They can arrest him before he knows what's happening. I reached across and took her hand. Amanda, you're doing the right thing. You're saving lives. Mine, maybe Ethan's, definitely Chloe's, because who knows what Vivian would have done once she had total control. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Will you come with me? To the police station? I don't think I can do this alone. I called Liam on the way to the station, and he met us there. The same detective who had taken my statement 3 days ago listened to the recording with an expression that grew darker with every passing second. When it ended, she looked at Amanda with something like awe. "You understand that your brother is going to be arrested based on this recording? That he'll likely face serious charges?" "I understand." Amanda's voice was stronger now. "He was planning to help murder someone. That's not okay. It doesn't matter that he's my brother. That's not okay." The detective nodded. "And you're willing to testify if this goes to trial?" "Yes." Things moved quickly after that. The detective made phone calls. Other officers arrived. Liam explained to me in low tones that this changed everything. That Vivian's charges were about to get much more serious. That attempted murder for hire was a whole different level from parental kidnapping and fraud. "She's going to prison, Mom," he said quietly. "For a long time. There's no plea deal that gets around this. Not with a recording like that." I should have felt relief. I should have felt vindicated or safe or grateful. Instead, I just felt sick. Sick that someone had hated me enough to plan my death. Sick that my granddaughter's mother was a person capable of murder. Sick that Ethan had shared his life and his bed with someone who was, underneath all the manipulation and tears, fundamentally evil. "Does Ethan need to know about this?" I asked Liam. "Yes, he needs to know exactly who he was married to, who was living in his house, who was raising his daughter." Liam put his arm around me. "But not today. Today you just need to process this. Today you just need to be grateful that Amanda had a conscience, that you're still here." Florida police arrested Derek at his construction job that afternoon. He didn't go quietly. There was a chase, a fight, injuries to 2 officers. When they finally got him in custody and told him about the recording, he immediately tried to make a deal, offering to testify against Vivian in exchange for reduced charges. Vivian was still being held on the original charges. When detectives presented her with Derek's confession and Amanda's recording, she went completely silent. Didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't proclaim her innocence, didn't cry or rage. She just stared at the wall and said nothing. Her silence told me everything. She knew she was caught. She knew there was no story she could spin, no tears she could cry, no manipulation she could attempt that would get her out of this. The mask had finally, completely shattered. That night, I held Chloe while she fell asleep in my guest room that we had started calling her room. My beautiful, innocent granddaughter, who had no idea how close she had come to losing her grandmother and possibly her father, who had no idea that her mother had been willing to destroy everything and everyone to get what she wanted. Ethan sat in the doorway watching us, his face drawn with exhaustion and something else. Relief, maybe. Or grief for the life he had thought he had, the wife he had thought he knew, the future he had thought he was building. "She would have killed you," he said softly after Chloe was asleep. "If she had made it to Florida, if she had gotten away with taking Chloe, she would have found a way to kill you. But she didn't." I kept my voice steady. "Because you trusted your instincts, because you acted fast, because we protected each other. I brought her into our lives. I married her. I gave her access to you, to Chloe, to everything." His voice cracked. "This is my fault." "No." I stood and went to him, taking his face in my hands the way I used to when he was little and scared. "You fell in love with who she pretended to be. That's not a crime. That's not your fault. The only person responsible for what Vivian did is Vivian." But even as I said the words, I knew he would carry this guilt for a long time, maybe forever. The knowledge that he had let a monster into our family, that he had defended her, pushed me away for her, almost lost everything for her. All we could do now was move forward, protect Chloe, rebuild what had been broken, and be grateful that sometimes, just sometimes, evil plans fell apart before they could destroy the people we loved. The custody hearing was set for 6 weeks after Vivian's arrest. 6 weeks of living in limbo, of helping Chloe adjust to a new reality, of watching Ethan transform from the broken man who had almost lost everything into someone harder, more determined, more focused. He had filed for emergency sole custody the day after Amanda's recording was handed to police. Vivian was officially charged with conspiracy to commit murder in addition to the attempted parental kidnapping and fraud charges. She was being held without bail. But her lawyer, somehow, was fighting for her right to see Chloe, fighting to characterize the murder-for-hire plot as alleged hearsay from an unreliable source, fighting to paint Vivian as a desperate mother, driven to extremes by a controlling mother-in-law and an emotionally distant husband. The narrative she had spent years building was her last defense, and her attorney was wielding it like a weapon. I sat in family court on a cold October morning, Liam beside me, watching my son take the stand to testify about his marriage, about the manipulation, the gaslighting, the systematic isolation from his family, about discovering the plane tickets and the drained bank account, about the terror he had felt when he realized his wife was planning to disappear with their daughter. Vivian sat at the defense table in a conservative navy dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup, looking every inch the wronged wife. She had lost weight in custody. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she had been crying, though I noticed she could turn the tears on and off like a faucet depending on who was looking. Her lawyer was a shark named Patricia Hoffman, mid-50s, expensive suit, known for taking on impossible cases and somehow winning them. She approached Ethan on cross-examination with a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Westfield, isn't it true that your mother has always disapproved of your wife?" "No, that's not accurate." Ethan's voice was steady. "My mother tried very hard to have a relationship with Vivian. Vivian was the one who repeatedly pushed her away." But your mother did suggest marriage counseling, didn't she? Implying that there were problems in your marriage? She suggested counseling because there were problems in our marriage, because my wife was making me feel crazy for noticing those problems." "Crazy?" Patricia pounced on the word. "Interesting choice. Did your wife ever actually call you crazy, or did you just feel that way when she disagreed with you?" Liam stood. Objection. Argumentative. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Patricia moved on smoothly. "Mr. Westfield, how much time did your mother spend with your daughter before you limited that access?" "I didn't limit the access. Vivian did." "But you supported your wife's decision to establish boundaries with your mother, didn't you? You told your mother to take a step back. Your words from your own testimony earlier." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because my wife told me my mother was interfering. Because my wife made me believe that the problems in our marriage were somehow my mother's fault. That's what gaslighting is. That's what she did. Or perhaps you're using trendy psychological terms to avoid taking responsibility for the fact that you sided with your wife over your mother, and now you regret it." Patricia's voice was gentle, reasonable. "Isn't it possible that your wife legitimately felt overwhelmed by your mother's involvement, and you're now recharacterizing normal boundary setting as abuse because your marriage failed?" I watched Ethan struggle to stay calm. This was exactly what Vivian's defense strategy was. Twist everything, reframe the narrative, make the victim look like the aggressor, make the mother who tried to kidnap her daughter look like the real victim. "My wife stole $47,000 from our savings account," Ethan said, his voice hard. "She purchased plane tickets to Florida without telling me. She created fake evidence to file a fraudulent custody petition. She planned to have my mother murdered. These are not the actions of someone setting healthy boundaries. Alleged planned murder based on a recording made by the sister of a man with a criminal record who is now trying to save himself from prosecution." Patricia's tone suggested the entire thing was absurd. A recording that conveniently supports your narrative that your wife is a monster rather than a desperate mother trying to protect her child. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Martinez, stood for redirect. "Mr. Westfield, in the months before you discovered your wife's plan, did you notice any changes in her behavior?" "She was happier," Ethan said quietly. "That's what I remember most. She seemed lighter, more relaxed. She was nice to me, which she hadn't been in months. She suggested we renew our vows, take a vacation, work on our marriage. I thought maybe we had turned a corner." He paused. "Now I know she was happy because she thought she was about to escape. She was nicer because she thought in a few more weeks she would never have to see me again. She was planning her exit, and I was too stupid to see it." Jennifer let that sit for a moment. "And when you confronted your wife with the evidence, what did she say?" "She didn't deny it." Ethan looked directly at Vivian, who looked away. "She just said, I never really loved her anyway. that Chloe was her insurance policy against being thrown away by the Westfield family. She admitted using our daughter as a weapon. She admitted everything except the murder plot. And even that she only denied because Derek hadn't told her yet that Amanda had recorded him. When it was my turn on the stand, Patricia Hoffman came at me like I was the one on trial. She asked about every gift I had given Chloe, every time I had babysat, every piece of advice I had offered Ethan about his marriage. She made it sound like I was a controlling matriarch, trying to run my adult son's life. Mrs. Westfield, you're a wealthy woman, aren't you? I'm financially comfortable, yes. You sold your business for several $1,000,000. You own your home outright. You have significant investments. Patricia smiled. Would you say you're used to getting what you want? I'm used to working hard for what I earn. But you wanted your son to leave his wife, didn't you? You never thought Vivian was good enough for him. That's not true. I kept my voice level even though anger was burning in my chest. I wanted my son to be happy. I wanted Vivian to be happy. I wanted them to have a strong marriage. I spent 2 years trying to build a relationship with her, and she rejected every attempt. Or perhaps you tried to control that relationship, and she very reasonably resisted. Patricia tilted her head. Mrs. Westfield, isn't it true that you have significant influence over your son? That he depends on you emotionally and potentially financially? My son is a successful architect who owns his own home and supports his family. He doesn't depend on me financially at all. But emotionally? You're very close, aren't you? I'm close with both my sons. That's what good families do. We support each other. So close that when he called you during a birthday party and told you to take his daughter without explanation, you just did it. No questions asked. Doesn't that level of obedience suggest an unhealthy dynamic? Jennifer was on her feet. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Ms. Hoffman, ask questions, don't make speeches. But again, the insinuation hung in the air. Patricia had planted the seed that maybe I was the problem, that maybe Vivian had been right to try to protect Chloe from my influence. The psychologist who had evaluated Chloe testified next. Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in child trauma, had spent hours with my granddaughter over the past 6 weeks. She spoke carefully, aware that her words carried enormous weight. Chloe is experiencing significant trauma from the events of the party, Dr. Chen said. She witnessed her mother being arrested, heard shouting and accusations, and has since been told that her mother did something very bad and can't see her right now. For a 4-year-old, this is devastating. In your professional opinion, Patricia asked, would it be harmful to continue separating Chloe from her mother? It would be harmful to place Chloe in any situation where she feels unsafe or witnesses adult conflict, Dr. Chen said diplomatically. But her mother is not a danger to her, is she? Whatever Vivian allegedly planned regarding Mrs. Westfield, there's no evidence she ever intended to harm her own child. Parental kidnapping is inherently harmful to a child, Dr. Chen said firmly. Removing a child from their other parent, from their home, from their stability, even if that parent isn't physically abusive, causes significant psychological damage. Additionally, exposing a child to criminal behavior, to dishonesty, to manipulation, teaches them that these behaviors are acceptable. Chloe needs consistency, honesty, and safety right now. And you believe she has that with her father and grandmother? I believe she has a father who is committed to her well-being and a grandmother who clearly loves her very much. I believe she has stability in Mrs. Westfield's home while Mr. Westfield processes his divorce and establishes a new living situation for himself and his daughter. I believe she is in therapy, adjusting as well as can be expected, and should not be subjected to further upheaval. Patricia tried a few more questions, but Dr. Chen was unshakable. She had evaluated hundreds of children in custody disputes. She knew when a child was being used as a pawn and when a child was genuinely being protected. Then came Amanda Torres. She walked to the stand looking terrified, but her voice was steady as she identified herself and explained her relationship to Derek. Jennifer played the recording for the entire courtroom. Derek's voice filled the space, casual and cold, describing how Vivian had asked him to find someone who could handle the grandmother problem permanently. I watched Vivian's face as she heard it. She closed her eyes, jaw clenched, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. But I didn't know if she was crying from remorse or from rage at being caught. With her, it was impossible to tell what was real and what was performance. Patricia tried to discredit Amanda on cross-examination, suggested she had a grudge against her brother, that she had manufactured the recording, that she was being paid by our family to lie. Amanda held firm. "I'm not being paid anything," she said clearly. "I came forward because my brother admitted to planning a murder. Because Vivian Westfield tried to hire someone to kill Catherine Westfield. Because that's wrong, and I couldn't stay quiet about it, even if it means my brother goes to prison." Very convenient that you suddenly developed a conscience right when your brother was facing serious charges and needed leverage for a plea deal. I developed a conscience when I realized an innocent woman almost died because of my brother's greed and Vivian's hatred. Amanda looked directly at me. "Mrs. Westfield didn't do anything except love her granddaughter. She didn't deserve what Vivian planned for her. Nobody deserves that." The final testimony came from Detective Morrison, who walked through all the evidence systematically. The plane tickets, the drained bank accounts, the rental house in Florida, the fake custody petition with its fabricated allegations, the edited videos Rose had created, the pattern of manipulation and planning that had gone on for months. "In your career, Detective, how many parental abduction cases have you investigated?" Jennifer asked. 47. "And how would you characterize this case compared to others?" "This was one of the most premeditated and elaborate plans I've seen," Detective Morrison said. "Most parental abductions are impulsive, emotional decisions made in the heat of conflict. This was different. Mrs. Westfield spent months setting this up. She drained the accounts systematically so her husband wouldn't notice. She recruited her niece to create false evidence. She established a relationship with a man in another state who would provide cover for her relocation. She filed legal documents containing deliberate falsehoods. She researched murder-for-hire options. This wasn't a desperate mother making a bad decision in a moment of panic. This was calculated, planned, and executed with the specific intent to destroy multiple people's lives." Patricia did her best to poke holes in the timeline, to suggest that maybe Vivian had been planning to leave, but not to kidnap. That maybe the murder-for-hire conversation was Derek's fantasy rather than Vivian's plan. But the evidence was overwhelming. The paper trail was clear. And Derek himself, facing 25 to life, had already agreed to testify that Vivian had offered him $50,000 to arrange my death. The judge called a recess before closing arguments. I stood in the hallway with Ethan and Liam, all of us drained from reliving the nightmare. Ethan was pale, his hands shaking slightly. "What if she gets shared custody?" he whispered. "What if the judge thinks Chloe needs her mother despite everything? What if—" "She won't." Liam's voice was firm. "Ethan, she planned to murder our mother. She committed fraud. She attempted parental kidnapping. No judge is going to give her unsupervised access to Chloe. At best, she might get supervised visits eventually, after she serves whatever prison sentence she receives. But she's not getting custody. That's not going to happen." But I saw the fear in Ethan's eyes. The fear that even now, even after everything, Vivian might somehow win. That the mask she wore, the victim story she told, might be convincing enough to give her what she wanted. The fear that our legal system might fail to protect his daughter from the woman who had given birth to her. We went back inside for closing arguments. Patricia painted Vivian as a frightened mother, driven to desperation by a controlling family and an emotionally absent husband. She suggested that the murder-for-hire plot was exaggerated, that Derek was lying to save himself, that at worst Vivian had made some very bad choices, but her love for Chloe was real, and that bond should not be severed. Jennifer's closing was devastating in its simplicity. She held up a timeline, showing each step of Vivian's plan. She played excerpts from the recording again. She showed the jury and judge the photos of the suitcases packed and hidden, the plane tickets purchased, the money stolen. She showed text messages between Vivian and Derek discussing the grandmother problem and how much it would cost to solve it permanently. "This is not a mother trying to protect her child," Jennifer said quietly. "This is a narcissist trying to eliminate anyone who stood in the way of what she wanted. She wanted money, she wanted control, and she wanted revenge on a family she felt had never accepted her. And she was willing to destroy that family, including murdering a grandmother whose only crime was loving her granddaughter too much, to get what she wanted. Catherine Westfield is alive today only because her son trusted his instincts and acted quickly. Chloe Westfield still has her father only because he discovered this plan before Vivian could execute the next phase. This family survived not because Vivian had mercy, but because they were smart enough and fast enough to stop her. The judge took a 15-minute recess to review everything. Those 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. I held Ethan's hand and prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in, that justice would prevail, that my granddaughter would be protected, that this nightmare would finally end. When the judge returned, her face was set in stone. She looked at Vivian with something close to disgust. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented in this case," Judge Williams said, "and I am appalled. Mrs. Westfield, you have shown yourself to be manipulative, dishonest, and dangerous. You attempted to kidnap your daughter, defraud your husband, and orchestrate the murder of your child's grandmother. You have shown no remorse, no accountability, and no indication that you understand the severity of your actions. I am granting Mr. Westfield sole legal and physical custody of Chloe Westfield. Your parental rights are hereby terminated pending the outcome of your criminal trial. You will have no contact with the minor child. This order is effective immediately." Vivian stood, her face contorted with rage. "You can't do this! She's my daughter! You can't take my daughter!" "I can, and I have. This hearing is concluded." Judge Williams stood and left the bench as bailiffs moved toward Vivian, who was screaming now, completely unraveling. Ethan collapsed into his chair, his whole body shaking with sobs. Liam had his arms around his brother, and I just stood there, numb with relief and grief and exhaustion, knowing that we had won, but that the cost had been almost everything we had. 6 months after the custody hearing, I stood in my kitchen making pancakes while Chloe sat at the counter chattering about her upcoming kindergarten enrollment. She was wearing her favorite purple pajamas, her blonde hair messy from sleep, and she looked happy. Not perfectly healed, not untouched by what had happened, but happy in the way children can be when they finally feel safe again. Ethan had moved into a townhouse 3 blocks from my house in early December. Close enough that Chloe could walk to Grandma's house when she got older, far enough that my son could rebuild his independence and his life. The townhouse was bright and modern, nothing like the house he had shared with Vivian. He had sold that house immediately after the divorce was finalized, unable to spend one more night under the roof where his wife had plotted murder and kidnapping. Vivian had taken a plea deal, 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted parental kidnapping, and fraud. Her parental rights had been permanently terminated. Chloe would not see her mother again until she was 19 years old, if she chose to see her at all. The therapist said we would let Chloe decide when she was old enough to understand what had really happened. For now, we told her that Mommy had made very serious mistakes and had to go away for a long time as a consequence. That sometimes adults do bad things and have to face punishment, just like children do, but much more serious. Chloe had cried about it for weeks. Dr. Chen said that was normal, that children love their parents even when those parents are dangerous, even when they don't deserve that love. We held her through the nightmares and the questions and the anger. We let her grieve the mother she thought she had, the mother who had existed only in a child's innocent perception. But slowly, gradually, she had started to heal. She laughed more. She played without constantly looking over her shoulder. She stopped asking when Mommy was coming back. She started calling my house home and Ethan's townhouse Daddy's house, and seemed to understand that she was lucky to have 2 homes where people loved her unconditionally. Rose had cooperated fully with prosecutors and received probation and community service. She had moved back to Pennsylvania, and I heard she was working at a veterinary clinic, trying to rebuild her life away from her aunt's influence. She had sent Ethan a letter apologizing, explaining that she had been so desperate for Vivian's approval that she hadn't questioned what she was being asked to do. Ethan hadn't responded. Some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness, at least not yet. Derek was serving 22 years in a Florida prison. He had testified against Vivian, confirming every detail of the murder-for-hire plot, and in exchange had avoided a life sentence. Amanda had moved to Georgia to start over, away from her brother's shadow, and the family who had ostracized her for turning him in. She sent me a Christmas card with a note that said simply, "Thank you for being kind to me when you had every reason not to be." I had framed that card and kept it on my desk. A reminder that sometimes courage comes from unexpected places, that sometimes people surprise you with their capacity for doing the right thing even when it costs them everything. Ethan was dating again, tentatively, a woman named Rachel who worked as a landscape architect and had never been married. She was kind to Chloe, respectful of boundaries, patient with my son's trauma-induced trust issues. I liked her. More importantly, she seemed to genuinely like him, not his money or his family connections or what he could provide, just him. "When's Daddy coming to get me?" Chloe asked, maple syrup on her chin. "In about an hour. You're going to the aquarium today, remember?" "With Rachel," Chloe's face lit up. "She said we can see the penguins and maybe touch a starfish." I wiped the syrup off her face and smiled. "That sounds wonderful, sweetie." "Grandma?" She looked at me with those serious blue eyes that sometimes seemed too old for a 5-year-old. "Are you happy now?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes, baby, I'm very happy. Are you happy?" "I think so." She considered this carefully, the way children do when they're trying to understand complicated feelings. "I'm sad sometimes about Mommy, but I'm happy that I have you and Daddy and Uncle Liam and Rachel, and I'm happy that nobody yells anymore. Nobody yells anymore." Such a simple statement that revealed so much about what she had lived through. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the syrup-sweet smell of her hair. "I'm happy about that, too." Liam and Linda had gotten engaged last month. They were planning a small wedding in the fall, and Chloe was thrilled to be the flower girl. My family was rebuilding itself, different than it had been, but somehow stronger for having survived something that should have destroyed us. I had started volunteering with a local organization that helped grandparents navigate custody issues. Twice a week, I sat in a community center and listened to stories that reminded me how close I had come to losing everything. I helped other grandmothers understand their rights, connected them with lawyers, offered support from someone who had been through the worst and survived. It gave me purpose beyond my own family, helped me process my own trauma by turning it into something useful. The nightmares had mostly stopped. For months after the hearing, I would wake up gasping, dreaming about phone calls and plane tickets and a faceless man with a gun coming for me. But therapy helped. Time helped. And knowing that Vivienne was behind bars where she couldn't hurt anyone helped most of all. Ethan and I had grown closer than we had ever been. He called me every day, sometimes just to talk about nothing, sometimes to process the guilt he still carried about bringing Vivienne into our lives. I reminded him constantly that he was a victim too, that manipulation works by making you doubt your own perceptions, that he had done the best he could with the information he had. "I should have seen it sooner," he said once, late at night over tea in my kitchen while Chloe slept upstairs. "She spent years making sure you wouldn't see it," I replied. "That's what narcissists do. They make you think you're crazy for noticing that something is wrong. They isolate you from people who would help you see clearly. They make you dependent on their version of reality. You weren't stupid or weak. You were systematically manipulated by someone who had years of practice. She almost killed you. But she didn't. I'm here. You're here. Chloe is here and she's safe. That's what matters." He had cried then, the ugly crying of a man who had been holding too much in for too long. And I held my son the way I used to when he was small and the world felt too big and scary. Some things never change. A mother's instinct to protect, to comfort, to heal. Now watching Chloe finish her pancakes and chatter about penguins, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not perfect peace, because the scars from what we had been through would never fully disappear, but the kind of peace that comes from knowing you survived the worst and came out the other side intact. The doorbell rang, and Chloe jumped down from her stool, running to answer it with me following behind. Ethan stood on the porch with Rachel beside him, both of them smiling. "Ready for penguins, Bug?" Ethan scooped his daughter up into his arms. "So ready. Rachel, did you know penguins can swim really fast?" "I did know that. Want to race them?" They headed toward Ethan's car, Chloe's laughter floating back to me on the spring breeze. My son turned back before getting in, caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you." For what? I wasn't entirely sure. For raising him to recognize danger when it finally became impossible to ignore? for loving his daughter enough to trust his panicked phone call without question, for surviving Vivian's murderous plans so I could be here to help pick up the pieces, maybe for all of it, maybe just for being his mother and doing what mothers do, protecting our children even when they're grown, fighting for our families even when it costs us everything, loving unconditionally even when that love is tested by manipulation and betrayal. I waved as they drove away, then went back inside to clean up the breakfast dishes. Simple, ordinary tasks that felt precious now because I understood how easily they could have been taken from me, how close I had come to missing this moment, this day, this second chance at being present in my granddaughter's life. The sun streamed through my kitchen window, warming the counter where Chloe had sat. Somewhere in a prison upstate, Vivian was beginning the first year of a 15-year sentence. Somewhere in Florida, Derek was doing the same. And here, in my home that had become a refuge for a fractured family, life was slowly stitching itself back together. Not perfect, not unmarked by trauma, but whole enough, safe enough, loved enough. And after everything we had been through, everything we had survived, that was more than enough. That was everything. I picked up my phone and texted Ethan, "Have fun with the penguins. Love you." His response came immediately. "Love you too, Mom. Thanks for everything. Thanks for everything." Two simple words that carried the weight of gratitude for life itself, for second chances, for the instinct that had made him call me that Saturday afternoon, and the courage I had found to trust him without understanding why. I set down my phone and smiled. We had made it. Against all odds, against a plan designed to destroy us, we had made it through to the other side. And that, I thought as I finished washing the dishes and planning what to make for dinner when Chloe came back, that was the only revenge that mattered. Not Vivian's imprisonment or Derek's fate or any legal consequence. Just this: surviving, healing, and building a life so full of love and safety that evil's attempt to destroy it became nothing more than a scar we carried but didn't let define us. We had won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but completely. And in the morning, sunshine filling my kitchen, that felt like grace.